I've never seen a group try so hard to rewrite their own history as much as I-DLE. I'm convinced that if they could delete their first couple of years as a group, they would. So it's been over a year now since I-DLE dropped the G in their name, and this has to be one of the messiest career timelines I've seen in a while. From the constant controversies to the tour cancellations and Spotify botting allegations, let's just say it has not been a good run for them. So on May 2nd, 2025, I-DLE officially rebranded by removing the bracketed G from their name. The move came out of nowhere and somehow it's managed to halt every ounce of momentum they once had. I remember when they were scoring back-to-back perfect all kills on South Korean charts, and now they aren't even charting close to that. They're canceling tour dates because they are struggling to sell out, and their latest songs are moving in such a weird way on streaming platforms. So what happened? How did they fall so badly from grace? I know a lot of people haven't been keeping up with them anymore, so let me update you on the things that has been happening with I-DLE after their dramatic rebrand. I-DLE debuted in 2018 under Cube Entertainment as a 6-member group. They got attention quickly partly because most of the members actually write and produce their own music, which is a rarity in an industry where idols usually sing whatever they're handed. The leader, Soyeon, especially built a name for herself as one of the most hands-on producers working in K-pop right now, writing and arranging a huge chunk of the group's catalog herself. Over the years, they put out some massive songs that leaned hard into themes about not caring about what people think, being whatever you want to be regardless of what label gets slapped on you. They did not have the privilege of being backed by one of the big 3 agencies either. Their rise was driven by the members' own creative work, which made their success even more impressive, especially for a girl group that produces their own stuff. In 2021, things got complicated for the group when member Soojin left after facing allegations of school bullying from former classmates. To be clear, those were allegations, not a court ruling, but the public backlash at the time was intense enough that she stepped away from the group completely. She's gone on to build her own solo career since then. The group kept going as 5 members, comprising of Miyeon, Minnie, Soyeon, Yuki, and Shuha, and surprisingly, they thrived. They returned in 2022, and Tomboy, their first single as a 5-member group, hit perfect all-kill status just months after Soojin's exit. For a lesser group, an event like that would have probably been a career ender, but instead of fading into the background, they pulled off one of the greatest comebacks in K-pop history. They followed it with Nude, a creative track that used Marilyn Monroe imagery to critique sexual objectification of women in media. Then came Queen Card, a campy song about self-confidence that went viral. By the time they dropped Super Lady in early 2024, they had become quite established, having a back-to-back run of hits no matter how corny people thought their lyrics were. 4 of their tracks ended up scoring what's called a perfect all-kill in Korea, basically topping every major Korean chart at the same time, which is one of the harder things to pull off in the entire industry. But in 2024, especially during their 2-album era, you could see their momentum slow down. Wife was considered extremely experimental and polarizing and received a lot of negative reviews and backlash. Super Lady was incredibly expensive and visually stunning, but some music critics and casual listeners started to mention that the messaging was starting to overshadow the actual music. The tracks were becoming so focused on delivering a massive statement that the melodies were starting to feel a bit secondary or formulaic. It was criticized as just another female empowerment song with no substance. Super Lady was also criticized for being too YG sounding. It had the vibe of a 21 song. Fate was their saving grace. This song wasn't the title track, but it would give I-DLE their 4th song with a perfect all-kill. It is also their last song with a perfect all-kill as at July 2026. The members were approaching their 7-year mark, which is a notorious milestone in the K-pop world. It is the time when initial contracts expire and the groups either break up, lose members, or negotiate new terms. For a self-produced group where the leader holds so much creative control, the negotiations were probably intense. Fans were holding their breaths, wondering if they would even survive the 7-year curse, especially considering that the members have been loud about their problems with Cube Entertainment. They have spoken out about the company so many times that people assumed they would leave the company and not renew.
알잖아. 살려달라고요? 네. 뭐 어디서 협박받고 있어요?
예쁘게 살려달라고.
회사에서 부당한 대우예요? 혹시 부당한 대우 받고 있으면 눈 깜빡깜빡거려. 회사 어디 들어보면 좋은 건물이 하나 있어.
저기 뭐예요?
와, 이
드디어 꿈꿨던 그 회사를 갈 수 있다는군요. 바로 그냥
큐브에서 좀 잘해주는 편인지 레드카펫이 뭐 깔린다든지
에어컨도 안 고쳤어요. 쓰셨어요. 쇼파도 하나는 제 작업실에 있었던 건데 제가 버린 건 왜 여기다 갖다 주셨어요?
큐브가 정상적인 회사가 아니구나.
이제 알았어? 선물 엄청 났어.
아이들에게 큐브랑
뿅이 뭐야?
안녕. 이거 아니야?
뿅이야.
야, 너 진짜 나쁘다.
자 있어요.
샤르 있대. 그랬나? 오. 2년 남았어.
부사장님, 그 저희 4층 연습실에 있단 말이죠. 그 에어컨이 난 지 좀 한 달 됐거든요. 네, 엄청 더워요.
그 냉장고도 고장났어요.
네, 아무것도 되는 게 없어요.
네, 음향도 뭔가 이상해요. 바다도 엄청 미끄럽고.
그리고 마이크가 다 깨졌어요.
그 소파도 마이크 쓰셨어요. 소파도 하나는 제 작업실에 있었던 건데 제가 버린 건 왜 여기다 갖다 주셨어요?
밖에 사실.
야! 아니 너무 없어 보이잖아요.
그 휴가 가자. 언제쯤 가고 싶어?
반년.
휴가가 맞는 건가?
여러분. 또 왔어요. 큐브예요.
What's one risk that you're glad you took?
I never think about it. Me. Came cute.
Count to keep. Yeah, that's a big risk.
Yeah, joining the company.
Yeah.
멤버들을 만났으니까 아니었으면 사실 리스크죠. 어쩌면. Sorry,
Talking
Cube.
It's okay.
I love Cube. I love Cube. 아니에요, 큐브 안 와. 나 행복할래.
큐브 패밀리.
근데 큐브 엔터테인먼트 빌팬이에요.
네.
However, by the end of 2024, all 5 members had officially renewed their contract to the company. Usually, after a K-pop group renews their contract after 7 years, they tend to include more terms that could potentially benefit them or grant them more freedom because they are now established artists and the company wouldn't want to disagree with their terms and let them go. After the contract renewal, the first thing they did was a rebrand. Right around the group's 7th anniversary, Cube Entertainment announced a complete official rebranding. The group was officially dropping the parenthetical letter from their name. From that moment, they were no longer bracket G Idol. They were simply Idol. A little history on the name. The G was always a bit of a placeholder. In Korean, their full name is Yoja Idol, which translates to girl children. The Korean word idol means children, while the English idol implies avoiding work. But the group and the company gave it a deeper meaning. The I stood for individuality and the DL was a plural marker, and the G stood for girl. Soyeon has said in past interviews that the bracketed G was meant to be silent on purpose, a way of saying the group is more than just girl, that they never wanted to be boxed in by gender from the very start. So this whole idea of stepping away from the girl label wasn't some brand new concept. It had been quietly sitting inside their own name since 2018. I-DLE was also a wordplay on idol. Shortly after, they confirmed 2 releases back-to-back. A special mini-album titled We Are I-DLE, released on May 2nd, and an EP called We Are, set for May 19th. A brand new logo came with it too, a circular design built around a 5-pointed star made of little eye shapes, meant to represent the 5 current members and their individuality. The era began with a cinematic trailer called 4G. All 5 members are shown in sculptural white outfits, shot with a grainy lo-fi look, scored with a remix of their actual 2018 debut single. It played almost like a tribute to their past self, a kind of goodbye dressed up as a comeback teaser. Fans immediately started picking it apart for hidden meanings. Some read it as wordplay on forget. Others thought it meant for girl or for growth, or even just for I-DLE itself, a quiet nod to the group's whole history. They later released another teaser called the Identity Trailer. In this one, the members are at what looks like a train station, and Miyeon is seen drawing a graffiti of their group name, I-DLE. Then they all walk out and Miyeon picks up a stone and throws at the glass, destroying the G in the graffiti and the group name. Cube's Entertainment's official explanation for the actual rebrand was that dropping the bracketed G, which had always stood for girl, was about moving past gendered labels entirely. They stated that the group would no longer be defined by words like girl, gender, or any other restrictive social label. At the eventual press conference, the members backed that up in their own words too. Miyeon said she'd always found the female label in brackets a little strange since their actual debut, and that the new name finally felt like claiming their real identity. Yuki admitted she'd slipped up more than once already, introducing the group by its own name purely out of habit, and joked that the public was just going to have to get used to the new one alongside her. The members themselves went on interviews expressing immense relief. They talked about how they had always been confused by the original name and how it felt like a massive weight had finally been lifted off their shoulders. They wanted to show that they could stand entirely on their own, completely independent of gender-based expectations. But while the members felt liberated, the internet's reaction was a mix of confusion and immediate skepticism. Their rebranding sounded like a pretty clean story. A successful group freshly re-signed with their company and used their anniversary to relaunch with a clearer, more grown-up identity. They definitely aren't the first group to rebrand after all. Except almost immediately, the internet found a completely different story buried inside that same announcement. And it had nothing to do with gender politics at all. Here's where things got messy fast. Along with the name change, the group's special mini-album included brand new 5-member versions of some of their older hit songs, tracks that had originally featured Soojin before she left back in 2021. This wasn't actually the first time her vocal parts had been redistributed among the others. That had already happened once before, right after she departed the group, but putting together a fresh, polished re-recording of those older songs and releasing it specifically as part of this whole rebrand moment hit very differently for a lot of longtime fans. Some people read it as kind of a tribute, a way of saying the old 6-member version of the group will always exist in its own little box of history, while this new 5-member version moves forward on a completely separate track. That's a fair way to see it, and plenty of fans took it exactly that way, calling it a respectful final send-off rather than anything mean-spirited. But a much louder chunk of the fanbase read it as something closer to erasure. The phrase that kept popping up across social media over and over was some version of Soojin can never be replaced, paired with comments calling the whole re-recording unnecessary and even disrespectful. People pointed out that the group had already been performing fine as 5 for almost 4 years at that point. Why dig up all of this right now, specifically during a moment built around dropping a letter that some fans had long believed quietly represented the number 6 all along, since 6 was the original lineup count back in 2018. To be fair, that whole G equals 6 theory has never been confirmed by the company or any of the members. It's pure fan speculation and nothing more. But once people started hunting for hidden meanings, they found it everywhere, including the brand new logo itself. Some fans pointed out that the 5-pointed star design left a small open gap where a 6th point would normally sit, and started theorizing that the empty space was a quiet nod to the missing 6th member. Again, completely unconfirmed. So within about 48 hours of the rebrand going public, the conversation had already shifted away from cool new identity and towards they're trying to erase someone who used to be in this group. After the rebrand, things started going terribly wrong for I-DLE. First was the alleged plagiarism controversy. On May 5th, teaser image for their upcoming We Are album started rolling out one by one. And almost instantly, people started pulling up side-by-side comparisons. Minnie's teaser showed her in a blue fur jacket with dark wavy hair and bold dramatic makeup. Soyeon's set had her posing in and around a car, wearing a pink scarf, lit in moody green lights. On their own, none of that sounds unusual for a K-pop concert photo shoot. The problem was the timing. Just a couple months earlier, Red Velvet's Sugi had dropped solo teasers for her comeback accidentally on purpose with almost identical mood. People started posting the two sets of images right next to each other, frame by frame, and a lot of people thought the resemblance was way too close to be a coincidence. A good number of fans pushed back hard on the plagiarism accusations, arguing that it was just a popular aesthetic that more than one person could use. The comparison spread fast, and they piled directly on top of the erasing Soojin controversy that was already being talked about. 2 separate controversies in 5 days, and the actual album hadn't even come out yet. Then on May 13th, things took a turn that had absolutely nothing to do with the rebrand itself. Members Yuki and Minnie appeared together on a Korean YouTube variety show, and partway through the conversation, Minnie mentioned she'd personally spent close to 10 million won, somewhere around $7,000, buying about 100 tickets so friends and family could attend one of their concerts in Thailand. Fans online had already nicknamed that whole section of the crowd the mini zone, half joking about how packed it always was with people she knew personally. Yuki jumped in to back her up and said something along the lines of not really understanding why they had to pay out of their own pockets for tickets to their own concert, since each member only gets 4 free tickets and has to buy anything beyond that personally. The comment was probably meant as a joke, poking fun at the company for being cheap, but I guess people didn't take it that way. People were watching 2 members of a hugely successful group joke about needing to spend their own money on 100 extra tickets at a time when K-pop concert prices had already been climbing fast across the entire industry. For fans who fight through ticket queues just to land a single seat for themselves, hearing an idol casually complain about buying 100 extra ones for personal guests did not go over well at all. The clip blew up on Korean forums almost overnight. One thread alone pulled in over 65,000 views and more than 1,000 comments, most of them calling what the members said out of touch and tone deaf, with many of people pointing out that the concert itself wasn't even funded out of the members' own pockets to begin with. It's the company and the production staff covering those costs, not the idols personally. It became enough of a story that by the time the group held their official press conference for We Are on May 19th, Yuki addressed it head-on, apologizing and explaining she'd just been trying to bring up energy for a fun variety show segment, not trying to disrespect anyone who supports them. Soyeon backed her up publicly too, saying Yuki genuinely cares about the fans I was simply playing things up for the cameras the way you do on that kind of show. So by mid-May, you've got the Rebrand backlash, the Sujin erasure accusations, an alleged plagiarism controversy, and now a full-blown fan relations blow-up. All stacked in about 2.5 weeks, and the actual album still hadn't dropped yet. It finally did on May 19th. Prior to the album release, the era began with the pre-release single Girlfriend. Girlfriend is an upbeat song. It's another bold female empowerment anthem celebrating female solidarity and emotional independence. The song wasn't really talked about or positively received or even promoted. It also wasn't much different from their previous works. Girlfriend was probably just an introduction into this new Rebrand era. The title track, Good Thing, came out alongside the rest of the We Are mini album, and for a group that's historically been one of the strongest digital performers in the entire genre, the first reaction on Korea's real-time charts was rough. Within the first hour, Good Thing failed to crack Melon's Top 100 chart at all. For context, this had not happened to I-DLE since their literal debut single back in 2018. Good Thing briefly touched number 14 on Bugs and number 62 on Genie, but it was still kind of low considering that this group had a huge insane streak for years. And the little momentum didn't even hold up past the first night. By the next day, it had started falling down the charts. Some fans pointed out that their songs tend to rise on charts, but that didn't happen with Good Thing, and people started observing that their hold was starting to slip. I've seen people say that their downfall actually started with Klaxon and the I Sway era, because it broke their perfect all-kill streak, but even that at least performed decently on Korean charts, with Klaxon having at least multiple top 10 entries. But with the We Are album and Good Thing, there wasn't even a decent chart performance or peaks. On domestic Korean charts, where they used to achieve consecutive perfect all-kills with ease, their new material struggled to generate the same viral momentum. The massive casual audience that used to tune in out of sheer curiosity for what bold statement or corny English lyrics Soyeon would make next simply chose to ignore this release. While the physical album sold well thanks to hardcore fans, their cultural relevance in Korea was clearly slipping, and it's not as if they're a dominant group internationally to back up their lack of Korean hold. Honestly, I think Good Thing is quite a catchy song and gives similar vibes to Queen Card. So I was quite confused as to why it wasn't well received even in South Korea. Like, did the rebrand really affect them that badly? Anyways, while the group's collective identity was fracturing, their individual careers were pulling them in completely different directions. Throughout 2025, the members were heavily focused on their own projects. And then, right in the middle of this awkward transition phase, Soyeon got dragged into a massive controversy. In October 2025, Korean producer RT released a track called Damn Daddy that featured Soyeon. Almost immediately after the music video dropped, French singer-songwriter Isolde publicly called it out for being a frame-by-frame copy of her 2024 music video for You Could Never. Isolde didn't hold back. She took to X and Instagram directly tagging Soyeon and calling out the K-pop industry for a long history of stealing aesthetics from Black artists while ignoring the cultural context. By the end of 2025, the I-DLE rebrand looked like a disjointed, alienating disaster. In December 2025, Cube Entertainment tried to change the narrative. If the domestic market was turning cold, they could look outward. They announced the group's fourth worldwide concert tour, titled Syncopation. The PR pitch for Syncopation was huge. They promised a tour that would reflect their limitless new identity. They booked venues across Asia, Oceania, and crucially, North America. They were aiming for giant arenas like the Kia Forum in Inglewood and the Prudential Center in Newark. This was supposed to be their definitive statement that they were a global powerhouse. To hype up the tour, they dropped a brand new digital single in January 2026 called Mono, featuring the artist Sky Water. Mono went for an ultra-minimalistic, moody vibe. It lacks the explosive beats and heavy rap verses that the group built their entire identity on. The strategy was obvious. Mono was designed to cater to the Western audience. It was an easy listening, low-energy track. But this wasn't the sound I-DLE has been known for. The engagement for Mono was painfully lukewarm. The views on the music video were sluggish, and the fan response was basically a collective shrug. And that lack of enthusiasm started to directly impact the one thing that actually matters to the company's bottom line: ticket sales. When the tickets for the North American leg of the Syncopation tour went live, the demand just was not there. The prices were astronomically high, thanks to VIP packages and dynamic pricing, which is a standard industry practice, but a terrible move when your hype is at an all-time low. Weeks went by and entire sections of these arenas remained completely empty. Then on April 19, 2026, Cube Entertainment released a statement. They announced that the entire North American leg of the Syncopation tour, all 10 cities, were officially cancelled. The official reason given by the company was scheduling conflicts. Of course, nobody bought that excuse for a second. You do not accidentally schedule 10 major arena dates in the United States and Canada, sell tickets for months, and then suddenly realize you are busy. It was quite obvious exactly what was going on. The tour promoter looked at the abysmal ticket sales, realized they were going to lose millions of dollars by keeping the venues open, and pulled the plug. It was honestly very humiliating. Just 2 months prior, they were doing press interviews talking about their grand vision for 2026. Now, they were being openly mocked on social media for failing to sell out venues that rookie groups were filling with ease. The standard PR move after a failure this massive is to go into hiding. You take a long hiatus, you let the internet forget, and you try again next year with a very safe, basic pop concept. But that's not what I-DLE did. They decided to release one more song. A song that was supposed to change the narrative. A song that was supposed to remind everyone that they were still the underdogs. That song was called Crow. Crow was marketed as a return to form. The lyrics were raw and bitter. They compared the group to crows, which are often seen as outcasts and scavengers. They sang about how hardship was their ally, and how they built their success with no family name behind them. The concept of the song compares the group to crows, birds that are often seen as bad omens, opportunistic scavengers, and outcasts. But instead of running from the image, the group completely owns it. The lyrics are quite heavy. They sing about how hardship was never their enemy, but their ally. There is a specific line that says, "Built this frame with no family name behind it," which is a direct, vicious shot at the fact that they never had the privilege of coming from a massive, big agency like SM, JYP, or YG Entertainment. But the song hasn't really been talked about aside from its Spotify controversy. The potential discussions around Crow was overshadowed by a massive Spotify controversy. The song was virtually invisible on major domestic Korean charts, yet suspiciously, it suddenly shot up to #1 on Spotify Korea, and I think it broke a streaming record for them on Spotify Korea, overtaking some of the biggest domestic hits in the country. It was also hitting #1 in Taiwan and Hong Kong, with massive stream jumps practically overnight. Mind you, this song wasn't really going viral anywhere, so it was so bizarre. people instantly started throwing out accusations of stream botting and chart manipulation. The ongoing theory was that dedicated international fans were using VPNs to spoof their locations to South Korea to falsely inflate the numbers. Some even pointed fingers at Spotify's own discovery mode, calling it a legalized form of payola, where labels sacrifice royalties for algorithmic pushes. Instead of Crow being the authentic underdog anthem that saved their reputation, it just became another scandal moment that made them look disconnected and desperate to manufacture a hit after constantly trying and failing. Recently, they're in talks again for another minor controversy. They released a teaser for Gimme That Love, which is, I think, the title track for their upcoming album We Made, set to release on July 6th. And this song, it's obviously Afrobeats inspired. You know what happens when a group does Afrobeat inspired songs? They get the Tyler copy allegations. So I-DLE is going through what I will classify as a minor controversy involving them taking influence from Afrobeats. Overall, in my opinion, I think I-DLE was desperate to break into the Western market with this rebrand. They've already achieved significant success in Korea and we're probably aiming to go global. Like they have a whole English album with full English songs, English collaborations signed to Western music labels. So I think they want to go past the borders of Korea, which is honestly fine. But I think in the process, they've alienated a core part of their major audience. When you step back from the immediate drama and analyze why this rebrand stumbled so heavily, it highlights a classic marketing trap that happens all the time. The biggest mistake a creator or artist can make is trying to fix a problem that their audience does not think exists. The disconnect lies in the fact that the public did not view their old concept or name as a cage at all. They viewed it as their superpower. In a sea of K-pop groups doing safe concepts about romance and partying, their willingness to be polarizing, theoretical, and overtly political was their exact selling point. The moment they stripped all that away to become a more generalized group and abandoned their women empowerment anthems, they voluntarily gave up their primary competitive advantage. A lot of people stand them for their fierce feminist image and messaging. By aiming for a broader universal identity, they became less unique, not more. It's a powerful reminder that while creative freedom is important, abandoning the core narrative that captured your audience in the first place is a massive gamble that rarely pays off. I felt like the whole dropping G thing and re-recording the old songs were highly unnecessary and probably just noise marketing to build hype for their next album. I can't say if it was that big of a deal that it impacted their career so badly, but I do know that a lot of people aren't fans of their newer songs and overall aesthetic. It's good to want to evolve as artists, of course. It's normal to want a new image. In fact, I think their most recent songs are more mature than their biggest hits that made them become the top group at one point. But sometimes this whole rebranding thing just doesn't work out for everyone, I guess. Plus, the era of third and fourth gen groups is slowly coming to an end, as most of them are already fading into irrelevance. It could be that I-DLE has simply passed their prime, and everyone is just reading too much into the rebrand thing. Third gen and fourth gen are dying out. I-DLE isn't an exception to this. They have passed their peak and they might never see it again.